Welcome to the Pelican Brief. I'm Jordan Salama, and what an interesting show do we have for you today. My guests are the founders of burr-bo.com, a digital community calendar sharing platform. One was also a guest speaker at the Digital Future, part of the Road Ahead series of workshops co-sponsored by the Pelham Civic Association and the PMHS Guidance Department, dedicated to helping students discover the wide range of career opportunities available to them as they begin thinking about college and the world beyond Pelham. I'm so excited to speak with them today about their careers and their advice for student entrepreneurs. Please welcome to the show, Dennis and Julie Roche. Thanks for coming on the show, guys.
Happy to be here.
So, Mrs. Roche, you were a speaker at the career seminar
Yes.
that we mentioned earlier. How was your time there?
You know, it was great. I was really impressed with the way the panel was put together in particular. It was a really nice range of folks who were kind of more into hardcore technology, all the way to people kind of more like me who were actually kind of technology as a bit of a second career. So it was a great compilation.
And speaking of careers, what are both of your backgrounds in this field?
So my background is in marketing and startups. I started my first business. Julie and I met actually at work 20 some odd years ago. At the risk of, we're going to date ourselves here. And I left to start a company. So I'd worked in advertising and media and a lot of advertising sales. When you run a company and you have to generate revenue, you're pretty much in charge of that revenue. So I've done a lot of that over 20 years.
Yep. And as Dennis said, we met in marketing. We worked for Procter & Gamble. And so but most of my background is marketing and market research for consumer product goods.
And afterwards, now we know that you started burr-bo. So why don't we talk about that? What is burr-bo?
So burr-bo is, as you said, kind of a digital calendar sharing platform, and it's really meant to be a resource for a community. It's to provide one place where people can go and get everything they need to know what's going on: school calendars, sports, after-school activities, nonprofit calendars, fundraisers, and really allow them to take that information and then interact with it so they can get it onto their personal calendar. They can follow groups to know what's always going on and get updates about things as they change.
And I think, because knowing the interest in startups on the part of the students, I think the way it started was kind of interesting, because we had spent many years volunteering in the community. We had run the soccer league together, we had done lots of nonprofit work, and we had 4 kids. And it was so hard to keep track of things. And it started with a back and forth between the two of us, where I was really upset at how disorganized everything was, and I had a bunch of solutions that weren't particularly good that I was describing, and at one point I declared that I was going to start a company that actually did this, and Julie had a much better idea, which became burr-bo, but it was a product of our experience as parents, as volunteers, and obviously with our business experience as well. So it wasn't like it dropped out of outer space and landed on our head. It evolved from things that we understood.
Mm-hmm. And how is burr-bo then different from other online or digital calendars that are available?
Yeah, so a lot of people, use the calendar on their phone or Google Calendar or Outlook if they're a work environment, which is great as a personal calendar organizer, but none of them really network to the community. So none of them pull the events and the things that are interesting into the calendar so that you can interact with it. So this is just a great time saver and a great way to kind of keep people connected.
Again, with startups, a lot of times you'll say things like, we have no competition, and you really shouldn't think about it that way. There's nothing that does what burr-bo does exactly the way it does it, but there are ways that people currently solve the problems. Right now, if you coach a team or a Cub Scout group or run a PTA, what people do is they just blast out emails. And as recipients of that, we found that really problematic because it was so hard to get it on a calendar. But that's how it's being solved. So there are solutions out there. We're trying to do it in a way that's better.
Okay, and right now you did say that you're focusing on teams, but what other markets are you opening up burr-bo to?
Well, I think that we stream, so we have a couple different types of calendars. We stream public calendars. So there's calendars that you can actually take some code and stream it, and I shouldn't be talking because that's totally what Julie's an expert in. And then we allow people to put up groups. So we have education groups, community groups, sports organizations.
So yeah, so a lot of the schools and some of the sports that are on kind of specialized software platforms will already have this calendar feed, so we can just pull it in and it automatically updates. But what the other real need, though, is for these smaller community organizations that don't have all that technology background, and they just needed a really easy, simple way to create a calendar and communicate it to their members and to the community, and that's one of the things that burr-bo does really well. And
you guys mentioned schools. I know that the Pelham Union Free School District actually has gotten involved with burr-bo. Can you guys kind of speak to that?
Absolutely. So, so because they're on eChalk, we can stream the calendar in. But aside from that, that contains some information, but there are lots of groups and organizations that have other things going on. So at the middle school, Dr. Raleigh felt there was a need to get the information out about all the after-school clubs and activities. So we have all of those on burr-bo. The band is another example. Practices, rehearsals, and concerts and things like that. There's a separate calendar for the middle school and high school band. And then a lot of the PTAs are putting their meetings and events and things like that as well.
And so how could parents or students, if they want to access these events, what was the process that they would go through?
Sure. So the nice thing about burr-bo is you don't even have to be a member. So you can go to burr-bo.com, and there's a little magnifying glass which you can search, and basically you could just search through for whatever calendars you want. If you actually get an account and register, the nice thing you'll get is you'll actually get recommendations based on your zip code. So it'll kind of feed you the information a little bit more easily and allow you to do things like follow the groups and add things directly to your personal calendar and sync and some of the more interactive elements.
I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about your development of the company.
Sure.
I imagine that when you start something like this, any startup, it's really difficult to turn it from an idea to a company. What were some of the initial steps that you guys took?
Well, we brainstormed what the idea was, and then there's a way in which digital companies often start. Why don't you describe that?
Yeah, so I did not have a background in technology. I had taken a couple computer science classes in college, but hadn't done that much with it. So for me, it was really kind of realizing I wanted to do this and teaching myself some of the tools. So I actually taught myself a prototyping software program called Axure, and it basically allowed me to take the ideas in my head and put them into a digital version that kind of looked and acted like a real website, but it didn't really have all the code behind it. And then the next step, once we kind of tested that and got some traction for that, was to find somebody to actually build it and program it. And kind of simultaneously, I decided I needed to know more myself. So I actually took some web development front and back end programming language classes and got myself up to speed a little bit more.
And so, and every entrepreneur thinks their idea is the greatest thing ever and it's going to totally change the world. And it's not, most of the time that's not true, at least not as they think it is. So you have to test and learn. So what we did is we built, Julie built what was called a minimum viable product, which was a version of burr-bo that was kind of stripped down that we launched in Pelham about 18 months ago to see if people liked the basic idea. And people did. And so that's really how we kind of made it happen, is that Julie worked with some developers and we built sort of the test product that really worked, but it wasn't as nice as what we have now.
I think it's really cool how you guys got Pelham involved in the beginnings of your company. Were you both working full-time jobs aside from burr-bo when you were starting?
So I kind of kicked things off because he had a full-time job at the time, and so I had been doing some marketing and market research work, project-based work from home. So I kind of was managing the two of those things at the same time, and as burr-bo really kind of became more and more of a full-time effort, that's what I really focused on. And as Dennis said, we launched the minimum viable product, and once we realized in Pelham that we were getting really, really great traction, we realized this was going to be a real business and it would be something that would require both of us to do full-time to really kind of take it to the next level, and that's when he joined.
Yeah, so I had worked full-time, and it's fair to say that I was advising Julie on it. Now, she was ignoring most of what I was saying. No, it was very important is that we worked together on it, even as I wasn't full-time, so when I did go full-time, it wasn't like I was this person showing up out of nowhere with opinions about what should be going on, and I did help with some of the sourcing and things like that. Because I'm a dad consumer of the product, she's a mom consumer, and in marketing you generalize wildly about people's behavior, but dads and moms tend to look at this issue a little bit differently.
Okay. And as dads and moms, you guys are part of a community. What other community organizations have significantly had a significant impact in burr-bo by participating or adopting it?
I will say what's interesting is we're still developing. So when you launch a product, you sort of grow organically in digital. You look at the stories of how a company like Twitter evolved. Twitter was nothing like it is now when it first launched. So, and that's sort of the mantras of the way digital starts. We're finding that actually mayors, village administrators, organizers of big nonprofits, they love this because they see this burr-bo as a solution to have all the community in one place, which will make it easier for everybody. So right now in Pelham, we're almost there. With the exception of one or two organizations, we can pretty much push a button and tell you what's going on at 5 o'clock on Saturday in Pelham. We have all the sports, we have all the schools, we have almost every nonprofit. And that's so great because then people can get about their lives and enjoy their community as opposed to trying to figure out what's going on.
All right, and that is great because it's so confusing and much more convenient to have it all in one place than to have to deal with so many emails like you guys said. It's very exciting to see where burr-bo is heading in the future. Can you guys maybe give us a hint of what's the next step?
Sure. So we've talked a lot about Pelham, and Pelham has been a great kind of launch pad for us. But the exciting thing is we're getting much broader now. We have users from over 50 zip codes now throughout Westchester County, a little bit into Connecticut, and we're spreading out beyond that. So really, for us, that's the next thing is to just get critical mass of calendars in other communities as well.
And we're going to start generating revenue, and here's how we're going to do it. We're launching a merchant platform for local businesses, and we're going to launch that by having what we're calling a buy buy local, give local platform. So we're going to allow nonprofits, we're going to provide a way for nonprofits to raise money from local businesses through burr-bo. Users can register for the program by registering with a credit card. When they use that credit card at a local business, that local business will have pledged a small percentage of revenue. Modell's does this with the soccer right now. It's like that, but for any local business that wants to do it. So we have a couple of local nonprofits already signed up. The merchants will be a part of it. So right now we have This Week in Pelham with events, which is what we send to all our users once a week, and we'll have something for This Week in Pelham's local business, and that's how we'll create a business out of it.
Will it remain free for the parents of the students?
Yes. Yeah, we use a couple of words with burr-bo. You've used one of them already, platform. And a platform is eBay's a platform, Amazon's a platform, Facebook's a platform, things you can use seamlessly. To really make that work, you want it to be free. And network effect is another word we use, is that the more people that get on it, it gets exponentially more useful to everybody there. And it needs to be free for that to really happen.
Of course. I think that's great that you guys make it free for the parents and students, because that's really who you want to bring the information to. And it's also great to see what the next step for burr-bo is in the future. Stay tuned, everybody, because coming up next, Dennis and Julie Roche will speak from their own experience and give their advice for student entrepreneurs. You don't want to miss it. We'll be right back with more of the Pelican Brief. Hi everyone, I'm Jordan Salama, creator and host of the Pelican Brief. Be sure to follow us on Twitter @BriefsOn. Get your briefs on for updates on guests, showtimes, and much, much more. And as always, thanks for watching the Pelican Brief. Welcome back to the Pelican Brief. We are so excited to have Dennis and Julie Roche, Pelham Entrepreneurs and founders of the digital calendar sharing platform burr-bo, with us today on the program. Mr. and Mrs. Roche, you spoke earlier about your work in developing your company, but I'd like to switch gears and talk about some of your advice for student entrepreneurs. What would you guys say is the most important step from turning something that is maybe just an idea in your head into an actual company that can make money?
Well, I think from my perspective, one of the key things was making sure I was really solving a problem. And clearly, as we talked about before, with 4 kids and family situations, I know I had a problem, and I talked to enough other folks that I knew they did too. So I think that's really the key thing, is if you're solving a problem, you'll find a way to make some money if you solve it in a good way for folks.
It sounds really cliche to say it, but I think you got to just do it. And almost no matter what the business is, you've got to get it off the ground. You got to be prepared to invest time and maybe a little bit of money responsibly to get it off the ground, to build it, to make it. I had spent a lot of time messing around with various startup ideas when I was in business school. Early in when I was working full time, I brought in Russian hockey jerseys because I thought that was the greatest idea ever, and it really was. It just didn't take off as much as I thought it would be. So I had done a lot of starting things, and over time you learn from your mistakes, you learn from things that go right, and eventually that makes you better at it. So just getting it off the ground is really important.
How important do you guys think networking is in something like this, in any startup?
I think networking is really important. Now, you have to have a reason for it. Just to go meet people randomly doesn't make any sense. But you have to feel naturally about networking. For example, something I advise all young people to do, and it's probably appropriate once all of you go to college, like the day you're at college, get on LinkedIn and link in with the parents of every friend you ever had who knew you. Make sure you know them, because it starts now. You might not see that parent again for a few years, but years from now they may be in an industry, and if you can reach out to them very easily. So I do think that networking in some ways starts very, very early. Having a reason to talk to people is really important. I think most people who've been in their career, they've benefited from the advice of people in their career, and they're happy to give it to people who are looking for help and advice. So if you're networking and you have a business idea, just saying you'd like to talk to someone and ask for it is great. I think most people will be receptive to that.
Mm-hmm. And speaking of advice, what would you guys say is the best advice you've ever received when we're speaking about burr-bo?
That's a tough one, but I probably just kind of like Dennis said, get it out there and just keep trying. Mm-hmm. And that's the thing when you're starting something new. There are 100 different places you could go, directions you could do. So you just kind of have to navigate your way until you find the path that's working and stick with it.
So some of it's specific to burr-bo, some of it's just in general, because I've been doing startups in various types for a long time. First of all, things take a lot longer than you expect. So get yourself all excited, because you need to be, but it's going to take longer, and it may cost more, certainly in the beginning. If you've never done anything before, then you don't know what you're doing. That's like the definition. So as part of that, you have to leave enough time to make mistakes and leave enough sort of bandwidth to make sure that you don't overextend yourself. That's very, very important. Another thing I would say in addition to networking is save your money. Always save money. Now, when you're in college, that can be hard or impossible because you may be paying for college. But once you get in the work world, if you have a full-time job and you think one day you may want to start a company or be a part of a startup, whatever you're making, save a little. I don't care if it's a lot, save a little. Or if it's a little, try and save a little, because that gives you the financial cushion. The first company I started when I left Procter & Gamble, Julie and I were dating at the time. I lived in my parents' basement, and I never spent any money. I lived on savings, and I didn't have very much, but I had enough to do it. And I think you'll talk to any entrepreneur who starts their own company, they will, in the early days, talk about the financial sacrifices. And they never really stop. We still make them now as part of burr-bo. Brendan would like us to buy a new car because we have a very old car, but we like it. It goes, it moves, and it keeps passing inspections.
That's what it's all about.
So that's really cool. And we're trying to invest in this business now. So you can do it responsibly.
Right.
I would never put yourself financially at a place where you're at risk, because there's enough other stress that goes on just trying to be successful, and we're not doing that now. But the way you can avoid that is to save money.
But a lot of our students, as you guys know, we are going to college next year. What would you guys say is your advice for them, where it's difficult to save money, but how can they maximize their experience in college?
Yes. I think that getting involved in entrepreneurship clubs, getting involved in startups, and honestly trying to start things yourself. There's ways that you can start businesses in college, and lots of people do. So I would do that. Is there anything?
No, and I was going to say, in college is a great time because typically you don't have the responsibilities of a family yet. Right. So you have time and you have energy and a lot of the things that you need. The money sometimes is not as important as those other things.
It's there are colleges out there that major in entrepreneurship. They have that, and that's fine. I think you'll find a lot of successful entrepreneurs didn't necessarily major in the subject in college. They majored in English or history or art or accounting or whatever they liked. But you can certainly explore that. You can practice writing business plans. I think doing stuff with other students is important because it teaches you how to work with business partners, which is a whole other subject. So I would just say get involved and maybe try and start things yourself.
I definitely think that's why it's great that we have here with the Guidance Department and the Civics Association that career seminar that we spoke about before. Was there anything said at that career seminar by you or by any of the other speakers that you think should be emphasized?
Yeah, I think one of the themes that was interesting was the importance of teamwork and communication. Because I think sometimes, particularly in technology, think of people as these coders that go into a dark room and they sit at their computers and code. That's not really how it works.
You sure? Seems like it sometimes.
Yeah, well, yeah. But you're on a team, and you have to learn to communicate. You have to have oral communication skills. You have to have written communication skills. Even a good coder needs to be able to document their code. So, so communication skills and teamwork and the ability to solve problems really are probably the themes that came up.
Yeah, when I told the story about the Russian hockey jerseys, this was pre-internet. A business friend of mine at school, we started this idea. We had an idea to put all the college search stuff on a CD-ROM and send it around the country. This was 1992, and no one was doing it. I could list out all sorts of ideas that I worked on at various points, and some of which I did a little bit. So I think getting involved is important. The other thing about it is you're going to be a product of your experiences. If you work in an industry, you can start a business from scratch based on a hobby, or you might be in an industry for many years and see the opportunity because you're really experienced. So there's various ways, but you will always bring your experience to bear, and I think that's important to remember. There's a scene from Seinfeld that I quote a lot. Kramer marches into Jerry's apartment and declares that it was his idea to have a sale on bra at Macy's. And sometimes I'll talk to someone who has an idea, and I'll think, you're Kramer. You have no idea about that particular thing you're talking about. You just were driving down the street and thought it was cool. Those ideas typically don't go very far. It's people who have a particular insight. So I think you can trust your judgment with that and learn your way into it as you get things going. But just be careful about making sure you have the right experience.
And I guess passion is very important. When you're passionate about a subject, then you'll make it go farther.
Absolutely.
We are running a little bit short on time. So what is any other advice that you guys have for any student entrepreneurs that you'd like to touch on? Anything?
No, I would say just if you have an idea, do something with it. You know, figure out what the next step is, and to your point, networking is another thing. If you don't have all the answers yourself, network with the folks around you to find the people that can kind of steer you in the right direction or get you headed in the right way.
A couple things. I think that integrity is really important. A lot of entrepreneurs exaggerate. I've spent a lot of time with a lot of entrepreneurs, and they tend to exaggerate. In part, you have to always be talking about what's going to happen next, and there can be a thin line between that and something that actually hasn't happened. So be careful as you go through your career, and know that as long as you're honest with people, because at times when you're starting a company, that's really all you have is your word, and things don't always go right, and that's okay. So I will also tell you that the relationships you build and the amount of trust you can build with people is going to be really important as you go off and start businesses.
All right, and we're going to end on a lighter note here with a viewer question from PMHS senior Gabrielle Lamardo. She wanted to know, have you guys ever considered going on Shark Tank, and if not, will you consider it now?
So I love Shark Tank, but I'm a little bit afraid of being told I'm dead to someone. If you're a fan of the show, you'll know what that means. Anyway, right now we are kind of regional, and I think to really get on that show, we'd need to be national. And at that point in time, I'd love to go on and see what we could do.
I will say this: we've raised money for burr-bo. We've raised outside money, and we'll raise more. Shark Tank does provide a condensed version of the way it really is. Investors, they shoot angry questions at you. They act like you've insulted them if you've presented an idea that they don't like, and it can be very hard, and it's very brutal. So I think it's actually a really good show to watch for entrepreneurs.
But maybe not right now for...
It's all Julie's call as to what it goes.
Of course. Well, we wish you guys both the best of luck with burr-bo. It's already become a huge hit in our community. I'm sure it's going to expand further abroad. I want to thank you guys so much, Dennis and Julie Roche, everybody, for coming on the show today. It was great having you and to hear your advice to student entrepreneurs. I'm Jordan Salama, and we'll see you next time on the Pelham.